It is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker and our moderator, Carol R.M. Moss, who is our speaker. Carol's a partner with law firm Helmuth & Johnson, and her practice led her to be at the forefront of the rapidly advancing and evolving area of cannabis industry and law in Minnesota. Her acumen in various areas of law and knowledge regarding the cannabis industry led her to create and grow her cannabis law practice to serve cannabis and hemp entrepreneurs. In an industry where laws and regulations on a state and federal level can change by the day, Carol's clients rely on her to serve as trusted advisor and counselor for their cannabis businesses. She represents startups to well-established businesses, from cannabis growers to retailers. She understands the evolving complexities and regulatory challenges involved in representing businesses in the arena, and regularly presents webinars on the topic and provides representations in local legislative matters. Having an advocate who understands both the law and the cannabis industry allows Carol's clients to flourish in this relatively new industry. Next up, our moderator, Pattie Garger, thank you, is a litigation associate at Helmuth & Johnson. Among other areas, her practice focuses on litigating claims related to property damage and insurance claims. Pattie's extensive work history of advocating for her clients against insurance companies naturally led her to the cannabis space. Taking the view that cannabis is no different from other types of commodities and personal property, she has advocated for cannabis claims to be covered fairly by insurance companies, especially since many carriers are including cannabis coverage in some portions of their policies. Her unique interest and background in working with insurance companies and handling property damage claims prepared Pattie to immerse herself in insurance policy interpretation and application on a national level. Additionally, Pattie has integrated litigation involving real estate issues related to cannabis leasing into her specialized practice area. Welcome to you both.
Thank you so much for having me. I get asked quite a bit, how did you get to have a cannabis practice? Especially in Minnesota, there's a lot of misconception about cannabis. And what really brought me here is I love working with entrepreneurs, and I love working with women entrepreneurs. And if there is an industry that is full of entrepreneurs, it's cannabis. And so that naturally led me here. And also they have better holiday parties too. So one of the things I just want to start off with, because I think it gets confusing, is people ask me, how do you have a cannabis practice? We don't have marijuana. Well, cannabis is the plant. We've been talking about it quite a bit. But what we have in Minnesota is the medical marijuana, and then we have legal industrial hemp. And marijuana and hemp, the difference is the amount of delta-9 THC in that plant. And so the THC, like we've talked about, is the compound that gets makes you feel intoxicated. If it has more than 0.3% delta-9 in it, it is marijuana. If it has less than 0.3% delta-9, then it is hemp. They're both cannabis. They're just different. It's kind of like the difference between a poodle and a shepherd. They're both dogs, and they're just extremely different. So Minnesota has a very prolific hemp or cannabis industry in which a lot of people get hemp-derived CBD and CBG products, and then also we have a good industrial hemp that people make a whole bunch of stuff out of. So what I wanted to talk about briefly are 3 points. One is just to talk briefly about federal law, and I'm going to just gloss over it because we've talked about it quite a bit. The second thing I want to talk about is Minnesota state law and how we have medicinal cannabis and the protections that come with that. And then the third part I want to talk about is the conflicts and the problems that those conflicts have. Because really, working in this area at times is like a legal gymnastics. And we are carving out, and things are changing so fast. And I want to just make sure people get an idea of where we are. So, like we talked about, marijuana is illegal under federal law. It's under the Controlled Substance Act, Schedule 1, no use, no medicinal use, which is kind of asinine given that here we are talking about medicinal use. Okay, so again, well, how can we have medicinal marijuana, Carol, if it's illegal federally? Good question. So back in 2013, President Obama, DOJ issued what's called the Cole Memo. It was written by Assistant Attorney General James Cole. And if you're in this industry, the Cole Memo is legendary, vital. And what that said was that the DOJ told people that if you have state laws and regulations that appropriately regulate cannabis, and including marijuana, and you are enforcing those rules and regulations, the federal government will back off. And this was very vital because without this, there was always that risk that the feds could come down. And I had a client who was in Colorado, had his business, and it was before the Cole Memo, and he did get a very harsh and violent knock on the door from the DEA. So this was exciting for everybody in this industry that the Cole Memo would come out. Well, the Cole Memo kept the peace. It's no longer around. In 2018, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded it. He is very anti-marijuana, very anti-cannabis. He thought it was going to be sold on every grocery store corner, and he rescinded it. And a lot of people were concerned. It created a lot of uncertainty in the industry, but by this time, we're talking 2018, how many years has it been going on? So people just kind of kept on going. It was really terrible because we didn't know what Jeff Sessions was going to do. And in the end, he didn't do much, and thankfully he wasn't around very long. So, what's keeping the peace now? The pot lobbyists mentioned it. We have the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment. And this amendment is really interesting because it doesn't make medical marijuana legal. What it says is, it says that the DOJ can't use any money to prosecute medical marijuana companies. So we all know the power of the purse is awesome. Well, this is exactly it. DOJ is not going to do something if they don't have any money. So that is what's keeping the peace, at least as how it's related to medical marijuana. So here we get the Therapeutic Research Act, and this is what sparked Minnesota's medicinal marijuana. This is how it's described, so that we possess and use cannabis for medical purpose. And here are some very quick high points. There's only 2 medical marijuana licenses. We've talked about that earlier. Only certain medical conditions can be certified. And that the medical providers are not the one prescribing, but rather they go to the dispensary and talk to the pharmacist. And then there needs to be a maintained relationship. Luckily for us, and luckily for the patients in this program, there was some protections that came about for people who were approved for medical marijuana. And this created the presumption that if a patient is in the registry, the patient is engaged in authorized use of medical cannabis. And so this creates the presumption that what you're doing is lawful. Then if just I had marijuana on me, that would be a presumption that I was automatically doing something illegal. And this sounds kind of convoluted, but it makes sense when I get to it. Employers cannot discriminate in hiring, terminating, or otherwise penalizing people who are in this program receiving medical marijuana, even if they get a positive drug test for THC. And this is huge because unfortunately you're seeing more and more employers drug testing everyone from, somebody working for the grocery store to working in offices are being drug tested. But The one issue with this, and what I've heard from patient advocates, is that this protection doesn't have a lot of teeth. If there is somebody who has felt the discrimination because of being in medical marijuana, their remedy or their what they can do about it is pretty limited. They can't sue their employer. What has happened is people need to make claims to the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, and they enforce anti-discrimination laws. And law like this is a discrimination law because it discriminates somebody on their medical condition. So it's not a private cause of action, but you have to go to the Department of Human Rights. The fact that you receive medical marijuana means it cannot be used against you in child custody cases, in parenting times, in visitations. And then this is a nice one to remember, because healthcare providers and lawyers, we're people too. If you are licensed and you are in this program, it cannot be the basis for discipline action. An attorney who is receiving medical marijuana cannot be pulled in front of the Board of Professional Responsibility, and other licensed professionals, it's the same thing. It cannot form the basis of a disciplinary action. So this is where things get dicey. We have a lot of issues because Minnesota and federal law contradict. And it's rooted well in our Constitution, well in our constitutional history, that if there's a fight between federal and state law, federal wins. And so this is how it comes about, or how it's affecting people using medical marijuana. Workers' compensation benefits. So reason why there is having a brain fart. The reason why the workers' compensation case is important is because that is a conflict between Minnesota and federal law. Minnesota law that says that an employer has to pay for reasonable medical expenses for an injured employee. That could be an attorney. That's Minnesota state law. So in this case, in this Mufta versus Mendota Heights Dental Center, this is brand new, this came out last year, hygienist was injured, and years after using opioids, started to use medical marijuana and wanted the workers' comp to pay for it. And it went all the way to the Minnesota Supreme Court, and the Minnesota Supreme Court said, we can't force them to pay for your medical marijuana because your medical marijuana is still a federal crime. And so that is why workers' comp in Minnesota will not pay for an injured employee's medical marijuana. Interestingly, about the same time, a very similar case went through New Jersey. In New Jersey, almost the exact facts. And the argument made by the workers' comp company was, if we pay for his marijuana, we could be up for aiding and abetting. We could be criminal conspiracy. I mean, these were the words they were using in their arguments. And the New Jersey Supreme Court reached a much different one than Minnesota's. They pretty much scoffed at that argument and said nobody is going to come in and charge you with aiding and abetting or criminal conspiracy. And they said that yes, you have to pay for the workers' comp. Another conflict, I don't have it up here, but it came to me this morning, was, I don't know if anybody read that article in the Saran Journal about a month ago. It was about this woman, a black woman, who is in the medical marijuana program because of a certain kind of condition. But she also received Section 8 housing. Section 8 housing is federal. And she was in a very difficult situation because if she used her medical marijuana in the house that she received via Section 8, she could lose her Section 8 eligibility. And because she was a black woman, she did not feel comfortable just going outside and smoking. So what she said she did is every time she needed to use her vape, she would leave her house, go in her car, make sure to not have her keys on her, do not turn on the car. She sat in the passenger, would use her vape, and then go back in. I mean, it's just, these kinds of conflicts just create asinine situations. Private health insurance still can't be compelled to pay for medical marijuana. Social Security, disability insurance eligibility, and Medicare prescription coverage, Medicare won't pay for it. Social Security disability, some people have had concern that if you are in the medical marijuana program that you could lose your eligibility. I did some research and we were not able to find significant information that was happening. One of the concerns is you could lose your SSDI if it is found that you are doing something to make your condition worse. And a lot of times addiction, alcoholism does that. So people were concerned that using medical marijuana may make your condition worse and cause you to lose eligibility. But after research, we didn't really find that to be a pervasive problem. Health savings accounts. Those are the mechanisms where you put money in and then you can deduct that money from your taxable income. Huge tax savings. HSAs are a form or stem from Medicare bill, and that's federal. And so because of that, you cannot use your HSA to pay for your medical marijuana. Dealing with potential legal issues with medical providers. I get asked the question a lot about medical malpractice, and I practice in medical malpractice, and Pattie and I have done a bunch of research in medical malpractice, and thankfully we haven't seen a lot of issues with that. There's been zero in Minnesota, and I think that's, in Minnesota, that's primarily because the doctors aren't involved in the dispensary or the prescribing, that they are just doing their job of certifying the medical condition. Some people have expressed concerns about doctors getting in trouble if they certify patients who are doctor shopping, because maybe they're on too high of oxy and nobody will certify them or not. I don't think that's any different than what's already happening and risks with potential doctor shopping. One of the issues that I always get asked about is CBD and CBN and all of the non-THC cannabinoids. The issue regarding those is they are not recognized by the FDA. And Minnesota Board of Pharmacy will recognize only things that are recognized by the FDA. And because FDA doesn't recognize CBD and CBG as dietary supplements or proper food additives, the Board of Pharmacy in Minnesota does not recognize that either. If you're questioning why you see those products on the market, I'll talk to you afterwards. Doctors do get into trouble if they, I've seen cases where doctors get in trouble when they are selling their own products, and that they are making statements about the CBG and CBN that are inappropriate because it haven't been tested. That's when doctors have most commonly been cracked down on. And to be honest, anybody who makes improper statements about those products, I tell them my legal advice. You cannot put on your website that this cures cancer. You just can't. And you'd be surprised on how many people still do that ridiculous stuff. There still maintains, some people do believe that doctors still maintain the duty to ensure that the patient is adequately educated. One of the common components of medicine is having people have their own self determination, and that they make their own decisions, and we hopefully educate them in that way. So while some doctors have been hesitant on even talking about it, other doctors claim that doctors have the duty to talk about it, because it is a way for their patients to be self-determined. That was it, but I did just want to talk about a couple of things based on what the pot lobbyist said, because I get asked a lot about those same questions in Minnesota. Why aren't we having legalization in Minnesota, Carol? When is it going to be? And like he said, in 10 years, and he's on year 8. I said it'd be here in 5 years, and I'm on year 4. So it's not happening anytime soon. It is, as long as the DFL does not have a trifecta, we will not be receiving it. We are working, I and some other lobbyists and some other lawyers are working with the legislature to help strengthen or make sense of some regulation. Just like the pot lobbyist said, people in Minnesota in the hemp industry begging to be regulated. Please tell us what you want us to do. You have people that are under the Department of Ag, their hemp program, and then you have the Board of Pharmacy that deals with the CBG and CBN, and they are in constant conflict, or my clients get bounced back and forth. So it's been a really frustrating year for people in the hemp industry, and I'm hoping that this legislative session we make some sense so that we can continue to flourish. And there are so many people passionate about this plant and what it can do, not just medicinally, but even fiber plastics. I mean, they are doing insulation, they're adding it to concrete, they're creating plastic, they're making new cardboard boxes out of it. It's just amazing. So I'm just really excited that this industry has started, and I just think medicinally and otherwise it's just going to be fantastic for Minnesota.